finished reading Ready Player One.
Oh, great, great. Okay, so this is a book that I read and I decided to send to Ben. So right now, future me is going to cut in really quick and say where you can skip ahead to because we're going to talk about it and there are going to be spoilers. And if you want to read it or you're interested and you want to avoid the spoilers, I'm going to say
skip ahead now to 18 minutes and 28 seconds. Or alternatively, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can click the annotation on the screen and be taken there automatically. If you're listening to this elsewhere, you'll just have to move your little cursor ahead. That's 18 minutes and 28 seconds.
Okay, so that's the time you need to skip ahead to if you want to avoid Ready Player One spoilers.
I would say that the premise of the book, like the blurb on the back, if I had to do the blurb on the back of the book, it would say that the innovator and creator of a immersive virtual reality system and basically video game that has established itself as like the premier sort of system in which people work and play in the future. He has died and he basically needs an heir. And so in the flavor of Willy Wonka, he's decided to run a competition that involves basically trivia from his experience in his life, from nostalgia when he was growing up in the 80s, and it basically launches a whole cultural sort of renaissance,
Movement.
and basically understanding what's going on in the 80s.
And it's like he's obsessed with video games, the creator of this virtual system, and so the whole point of the game is to do puzzles relating to his 80s past, which is an Easter egg.
Well, that's the
like
premise.
thing.
Actually, the point of the virtual reality system is that people it's really immersive. So it's like it's a sandbox sort of game, similar to, Minecraft, but with, very real graphics where it just feels like you're living in another life.
Right, that is the premise of the game. So like so far that's avoiding spoilers, but
Yeah, that's given to you basically by page 10. But we both read the book, and I really enjoyed it. I don't know if you both. I guess you both and Maggie, both of you must have enjoyed the book.
Yes, Maggie read it before me, and she read it very quickly, and within a few days, and then she's like, "You have to read this," and of course, like at the time, I was reading some other books, so like I finished those, and then I decided to get Ready Player One. And
Grant actually sent me a copy basically once he finished, and he thought I'd really like it, and so it was actually perfect timing because I had just finished a book that I was reading, like a book series actually. So it was like,
oh, what series?
Robin Hobb's Dragon Keeper series. So Robin Hobb is a fantasy author. And her most famous one is probably the Assassin's Trilogy. But what's interesting about most of her trilogy is that they have a super arc amongst like 3 or 4 different kind of trilogies. And so
it's all one big story.
It's all one big story, but the fact is that you can go in and read a 3-book set and leave it if you don't like it, or you can just come in and only read that and be fine. Like that's how they're designed to be read.
So yeah, I enjoyed Ready Player One so much that I decided, like Ben reads a lot of books, and like a lot of books, and I don't know if he would have really bought it for himself if I just recommended it, because he often buys, he buys a lot of books, but there's only so much money you can spend on it, and there are other things you might have wanted to get.
Yeah, I don't think I would have actually purchased the book on my own, just because, like, I am not really totally linked with nostalgia, so even though I had my childhood in the 80s, and I remember He-Man, and I remember there's a lot of the early Atari games, like, Commander Kings and King's Quest on, early DOS, and then, back stuff, like, I didn't really... I'm not so much of a person that I...
values nostalgia.
Right, that I probably wouldn't have picked up on my own based on the blurb on the back. That being said, like, I really did enjoy, like, the flavor of the book and sort of, like, the characters and the interactions and things like that. Now, what I was wondering, this is what I'm wondering, is that it seems like a pretty good book that almost anybody would probably enjoy reading. However, I know that Christina really has really no memories of her early childhood. And so I'm like, could someone who basically has no knowledge of sort of 80s get into the flavor of the content without actually having the specifics and still sort of enjoy the book? Or does it basically, require that you've watched 16 Candles or War Games or...
Considering that I've never lived in the 80s, and Maggie hasn't either, uh, yes. I mean, like, there are enough references to, like, things that are very popular that I still know what they are. And there were many things where I didn't know what they are, and some of them I even looked up. Because I was interested enough. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, I enjoyed the book because it was pretty well written. I enjoyed I enjoyed the story. So like, it was about, the characters' relationships and the main character and his struggles. And yeah, I really enjoyed the virtual reality system in which everybody lived, and I thought it was a really interesting statement about society. That's kind of what sci-fis do, right? They make a statement about like how we exist today, or like how the future might be, and in this world everything is total chaos and it's gone to hell, and there's nothing
Part of it's,
worth...
yeah, the premise of it is that part of the virtual reality's popularity is based on the idea that people are using it as a way to escape a very crappy reality. In other words, the reality of like government and social stability and wealth equality has diminished to such a point that people are basically abandoning reality in favor of this virtual system by which you can basically be beautiful, you can attain achievements and wealth that translate into real wealth. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but I mean, video games are already kind of doing this on some level. Like, they've had, like, early 90s, or sorry, late 90s and early 2000s, you had people selling EverQuest accounts and WoW accounts for lots of money, and then you had like basically pirated content where like people would go into like item collection games like Diablo, and they would sell their high priced items or their hacked items for actual real money, like for $4 or $5, and then they had problems where like it was basically ruining video games because people were spending real money to get hacked virtual items.
Yeah, and that's how this world is. I think you would have trouble enjoying the book if you didn't like understand or like video games, or if you didn't understand or like the 80s. Like these are kind of the two main premises of the book, besides maybe like a bad government over like side story type thing where there's like bad government influences who have a lot of power. There's a minor element of that, but
well, I would interrupt in the sense that a lot of people basically get sick of sort of like the bad government sort of influence. So I'd actually say that like Ready Player One is actually not based on the bad government. It's based on something known as oligarchies, where large corporations basically take the place and role of governments because governments have been sidelined. As far as Ready Player One, like let's say you were not like a person who is into video games, could you enjoy it on the basis of somebody's sort of passion? Because a lot of people are like very passionate about like crafts, like I mean there's entire Pinterest groups that do craft stuff or want to open up a Etsy shop or something like that.
Here's what I think. No.
There's
some people out there who would understand that, and they would go, like there are lots of people who, are obsessed with something or other, like for example, Harry Potter. I'm obsessed with Harry Potter. So, and like, I totally get that passion for something to where like you want to know all the details about it. But there are people out there who aren't like that. There are people out there, I would say maybe boring people, who have, not any kind of passion for anything in their lives, and they just kind of, go along. And so they would totally not get this character who is obsessed with the 80s and like wants to know every little 80s trivia fact, which is I wouldn't want to, but like I totally get it. And also, there's a like Ben was saying earlier, the creator of the video game world is leaving his entire fortune, which is like $230 billion to the player who finds these Easter eggs and like completes these puzzles. And, you know, they're completely based on 80s trivia facts. So there's a reason he's learning them.
Yeah, and it basically, when you are introduced to the character, you learn that he's in a lower social strata. So much so that he actually can't basically pay, like, what would be the terrorists to go around and visit different areas within the virtual world to basically gain rank and level up his character and basically pursue his knowledge. So he's basically done all the book smarts to learn all the 80s and watched all the 80s movies and everything that is available for free. But like he wants to use it as a mechanism for like social progression basically, and that's like where like the foundation of his desire and his passion comes from.
I think we actually avoided spoilers. I don't know if you had anything else to talk about, like maybe what's your favorite scene.
We've had this conversation about spoilers before, how we don't like the different spoilers.
You can go check it out on any of the podcasts. It's Gravity Puddles, and it's one of those episodes. It'll say Game of Spoilers, and we totally talk about it.
So my favorite scene, there's, I guess, two things pop in my mind. One is a favorite scene, and one is a favorite sort of plot twist or premise within the plot. And I don't really know what to describe it as. So my favorite scene is probably the one where he takes a wrong turn in trying to solve one of the puzzles, and he winds up in the museum that has all of the history of video gaming and has like the old arcades, and he runs into the creator's virtually created nostalgic pizza shop that he used to go to as a kid. Now what's funny is that like in Klamath Falls, they used to have a pizza thing called Stagecoach Pizza. I don't know if you've ever been there.
It still exists.
Does it still?
Yeah.
Is it still there?
Yeah, I've been there. Stagecoach.
And they used to have a room with the old arcade games, right? So as soon as they basically talked about this, it instantly set me back into this moment where I was like imagining a cross between my current Round Table Pizza joint that I go to and Stagecoach Pizza, which, you know, I had of my childhood, because basically that room sort of existed for me in my own childhood. And of course he gets caught up into this sort of arcade game that he plays, and
Pac-Man.
he wins what he would later learn to be as a very powerful sort of game artifact, which goes on to have a very, you know, important part in the conclusion of
he plays Pac-Man for fun, and he does a perfect Pac-Man game, and yeah, it helps him later.
Yeah.
So then, okay, so my favorite scene was probably, I just really like the idea of like the guy who's basically Steve Wozniak, right?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
his name is the great and powerful Og.
Yeah.
He's having a virtual dance party that he has yearly, and he invites the top people, and so they go to the dance party, and you know they're getting drinks, and then
Doing their anti-G dance.
you're right. There's like no gravity, and the DJ table where like the Steve Wozniak character is in the middle of this sphere, this empty sphere, and he's like the DJ table's in the middle of it, and first R2-D2 is DJing, and then
the great and powerful Og comes up from the mist, starts jamming out on the...
yeah, he's like, you know, everybody's like dancing in the zero-G environment, and then they like put programs into their avatars so they can dance better.
Oh yeah, they were basically cheating that they didn't know how to dance, so they were like, well, I'm going to download this sort of emote sort of dance.
Right. So, but what I really liked about it is like the oligarchy corporation who has a role in the video game. Like they're coming to attack because it's a PvP zone. It's kind of like a risky area, and they like break his sphere. They break into his sphere and they start shooting people because the top people in there, and they want to take out the top people. He's like, not in my party, and he like lightning bolts red lightning from his hands and destroys them all in like one sweeping move, and then it's like, let's keep going, and he like plays the music again, and everybody starts dancing again. Like I just really like that idea.
Did it like take you back to like D&D stories and things
That
like
that a
that?
lot of the book is actually like that. They actually mention D&D.
Yeah, it's kind of has that flavor. Yeah.
They totally mention D&D. It's part of like one of the puzzles, and yeah, like no, I just really like that bit. It was really amusing to me.
So the main character's name's handle as avatar nickname is Parsival, and he has a thing for another 80s aficionado named Artemis. And Artemis is this girl who runs a blog on the virtual reality system, and definitely knows her stuff, and is part of the elite sort of crew of people who were hunting for the creator's Easter egg that he's put inside of this video game. And so he's got a major crush on her. And through the course of his struggles, he ends up meeting her and developing both like a relationship and a friendship with her. And she ends up wanting to break off and distance herself from him because she has realized that he has become a distraction for her to reach her goals of finding the Easter egg within the virtual reality game. And same
Right,
with him.
right. Same with him. Yep.
Yep, same with him. And I thought that was really interesting that, you can like, it's something that like a lot of people experience, like when they go to college and they get like, a lot of their first really serious relationships, and they're trying to like study, but yet they like are in this very deeply involved relationship for the first time, and so it's completely distracting them from their goals or something like that. And you see it very much in daytime, like if you have like when this is more like when you're younger. I don't see this anymore in my age group, but I remember, in college or early high school, when friends would get like their first girlfriends, and then they'd disappear off the face of the earth because they were spending all of their time with that one person, and it does affect your life. So I thought it was funny that like that was incorporated into the story, is that basically there was this breakup so that they could both devote themselves to the Easter egg hunt.
Yeah, and he was, like it kind of was a motivating time for him because he really cared about her, and she was like, I can't see you. Like I'm not going to talk to you anymore.
Yeah, it changed the motives of his, when he first started out, he just wanted to get out of the slums and really, not be in such a dire sort of social stratus.
Right. And so he's like, you know what? If the only way she's going to talk to me is if the hunt is over, then I got to finish the hunt. And he like, he like works out. He like makes it so that at this point he's come into some money, and he like basically forces his system to lock him out until he's exercised enough, and via like how many calorie intake he has like a system monitoring his calorie intake, and if he doesn't exercise enough, it locks him out.
He starts improving himself in real life in order to achieve his goals in the virtual reality system, all because his motive has changed from just simply being, becoming rich or solving the Easter egg hunt to like wanting to have a deeper connection with this person that.
And he kind of has to get fit because the system like actually tracks your entire body, and he was like he needs to be fit so he can actually do stuff in the game.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think major spoilers over, so hello people for who skipped over.
A lot of people have roommate stories, right? And like we talked about like in our last podcast or one of our previous podcasts about like my roommate Dave, who had all sorts of room innovations that turned out to be not optimal, right? But basically,
Yeah. When you're setting fires because your sound system is hooked up to a car battery.
yeah.
I don't know if I'd call that innovation, but all right.
Or like taping your phone on the wall because you want it to be hung up. Yeah, so
Oh man.
you were like, okay, but this is the roommate that did the dishes, and I'm like, no, that was actually my next roommate. I moved in with a couple guys, and it was like a super cheap apartment, and it was actually awesome in the sense that they all the bedrooms had individual entrances, and they each had like a sink, but they had the two things that they shared. I guess three things was a living room that I didn't really spend a lot of time in because I didn't have the money to basically have game consoles, and they did. and I didn't really play on their stuff, not very much. And then the kitchen area, which would have been great if I had different roommates, because it would have been a great area to basically had friends over to, like, do cooking. And like almost all the girls that, like, I talked about dating thing, they really enjoyed cooking food while in college, because it was like they were sick of eating ramen noodles. Everybody had bachelor food, and so it happened to be a great date night if you could basically say, why don't you come over to my place and we'll like cook something
dinner.
that isn't spaghetti noodles, right?
Totally, yeah.
Right, that was like a big thing. And for some reason women like, when you become a housewife, they get a kick out of it.
Oh, that's another topic.
Yeah, the bathroom. So that was the three common shared areas. And well, just like a lot of roommates, when you sit down with your roommates, you're going to be like, okay, so what are we going to do here when it comes to garbage time? Are we going to share garbage? Are we going to share food? Are we going to divide the refrigerator up into parts? Are we going to like do a weekly cooking thing together and sit down and eat together? Or are we just going to do our own thing? Like, or you like to do showers in the morning, I like to do showers in the evening, so that's going to work out okay. There's all these sort of pseudo rule things that
right.
you get in with that turn out to be utter bullshit. Like once
Oh,
4 months
totally.
goes,
Totally. No, like, oh my
be like,
gosh.
no, I won't eat your pizzas, or I won't, or we'll trade off doing, dishes and stuff like that. And it turned out to be that this is like one of the things that we did. We basically said that we would take turns doing the communal dishes. Basically, I think it was premised about once a week. We would let our dishes go for like an entire week and then do them, right?
Which is actually a long time.
Which is
for
actually
dishes.
it's really a long time, but it pales into comparison, because like that would happen for about like 3 months, where we actually took turns, and Sam would do the dishes and I would do the dishes and Mike would do the dishes, and we would rotate, and kind of got to the point where like we were doing like 2 weeks, where it would be 2 weeks and 2 weeks and 2 weeks, and then
It's disgusting.
we got to the point where like nobody was doing dishes except for like me, because you reach a point where you're just not willing to tolerate dishes going past 2 weeks, right? Everybody has like their thing, like they will do it because like nobody else wants to do it at that point, and they just like, I just don't want to live with, and this is like true with everything. Like sometimes it's going to be, cleaning the bathtub, sometimes it's going to be cleaning the bathroom toilet, sometimes it's going to be like, vacuuming the common area. But in this case, it was dishes, and I had basically done the dishes for like 2 months solid, because I was like totally sick of this ever
Being in your
increasing
life,
period, right? But after about like 2 months, I was just like, guys, like I've hounded you about this for like the past month, that like it's your turn to do dishes. Like I don't care which one of you does it at this point. I know it's Mike's turn, and we've had this discussion. It's Mike's turn to do dishes, but
Right. It was one of those guys who's like, okay, man, I'll do it.
right. So I was just like, I'm not gonna do the dishes anymore until they get done, and you guys can take turns for like 2 times, and then I'll jump back in the rotation. They were like, okay, yeah, that's all right, that's nice. So anyway, Sam did dishes, then Mike did dishes. Sam did dishes, but by then it would like another month had passed, and then Mike was set to do dishes, and the dishes didn't get done. It went to 1 month, 2 month, 3 month. 6 months later,
That is so long.
6 months
Oh
later,
my gosh.
we basically had
That's unbelievable.
the entire nature of the apartment changed, because you basically had these dishes soaking in water that had like food and grease. So it basically had turned into this sort of algae pool that you just avoided. Like I stopped going into the kitchen or the common area at all, like because all the rooms had separate entrances, right? And I did the dormitory thing. I had one fork, one spoon, one knife, a
plate.
bowl, a plate,
Yeah.
and a pot, because I had an electrical pot thing, like one of those handy dandy things. Now, I ended up going into the kitchen on a semi-regular basis to use the refrigerator, which was kind of unavailable. When you would open the bedroom door, the smell, it kind of smelled like one of those like fetid pools that you get near like the roadside that people have thrown things in and stuff like that. It was basically like this fetid pool smell. But the really annoying thing was the fact that, flies and other, like fruit flies and things had basically used this opportunity to, like, set up shop. Always there would be this small cloud of, like, fruit flies, like, hovering in one of the areas of the kitchen because, they were prospering. We had our own little...
So gross.
We had our own little thing going
Fruit fly
on.
colony.
A lot of people would be like super upset, I guess, with their roommates, and it would really deteriorate the relationship. What was odd is that I was just like, I was beside myself. I was just like, this is amazing that anybody would choose to live like that. But I wasn't really angry at them per se, which is, I guess, odd. But the relationship definitely deteriorated because they felt really guilty. And so...
Right, so they avoided you?
They avoided me, right? Because I was the person who had, like, done the dishes. I, like, had kept up my end of the bargain. And, like, Sam kind of got a little bit because, like, he had done his part sort of half-assedly. And, it was really it was Mike who was going to be the real culprit of this not doing dishes thing. It also, like, kind of made a dent in my dating situation because I knew that I could not invite girls over to my place, right? And of course, when you're in college, you want to invite girls over to your place so that you can make out and do all the great things that girls can do, right? But that wasn't really an option if they were like, oh, I just need to go use the restroom, right? And they had to walk through,
the kitchen,
sewer-fitted kitchen pool area, right?
Oh.
And also, kind of the same thing happened with the bathrooms. Is like they were not super messy in the bathroom, which was great. Like, because it would like I could clean the bathroom like once every 2 weeks, or like it would if I left it for a month or something like that, and I wanted to have a girl over or something like that, I could easily just clean it up right quick, and it wasn't that bad. But the kitchen was a different story, and of course, I did have kind of like a long time dating a partner for about a year in college, and we lived in that apartment for about 2 years, but she happened to, like, we were close enough that I basically allowed her to come over because I was like, you want to avoid the kitchen. And of course you would go up to the sink and you would see that the grease had totally come away from the plates, and now it was like a film on top, and it was like algae was growing, blue, green. It was like a known sort of ecosystem, right?
That is incredible.
The real clincher on the story is that this went on for 6 months, and Mike comes in one day and says, dude, I really need your help. And I'm like, okay, so what do you need? He's like, my mom is coming over. She's like in the car. We have 4 hours to clean the apartment. And I'm like, well, whose fault is that as far as like the dishes go in the kitchen looking? Right? He's just like, I know, you gotta help me. I'm like, all right, Mike, but you're doing freaking dishes for the rest of the, there was only like, a couple months left in the year at that point. So I was like, you're doing dishes for the rest of the time and you're gonna do them, otherwise I'm gonna be on your ass. So anyway, he vacuumed up the front room and I basically started doing the bathroom. He answers a call because his mother called him. And so I don't know why I did it, but he talked with his mother for 3 hours while I cleaned the kitchen, that thing. So I got to reach my hand down into the algae pool and unplug the drain that would allow the fetid water to drain away, and I was the one who cleaned the dishes and basically got my hands all icky and gooey, and would look at like these basically plates that had become fuzzy with like some sort of wet bacteria or something like that.
I would never do that.
And so I got the kitchen clean and he got off the phone, and I'm just like, where were you, man? Like, I basically cleaned everything. And he's like, "Oh, sorry, I just, she just wanted to talk on her way over, and I didn't think about it." So anyway, I didn't really talk to Mike for much of the rest of the semester after that, because I was pretty upset. But the final note was that, I was like, well, what about, I'm not going to clean your George Foreman grill. What he would do is that he didn't like cooking and he didn't like cleaning. So he would just slap some chicken on his George Foreman grill, and he would let the grease just fall into the tray that it was built for that purpose, right? And it had a double side, so you could slap a thing of meat on there and cook it in 5 minutes. And it's a very popular batchless thing. But he would never clean it, so after about a week and everything, he would start basically warming up the grill without the chicken, so that the grease would get hot enough that it would become
Roll
more
away.
liquidy, and it would roll away, right? But the thing is at that point, it already kind of developed this sort of rancid sort of kind of grease on it, right?
Oh man.
It would get so bad that he ended up eating chicken that was basically almost raw. If he heated it too much, then the rancid grease would start burning away and flavoring his chicken. So
This is so disgusting to me. I would never live this way. And I would certainly never do that. I would get to the point where you were, where you're like, all right, I'm not going to do it anymore. This is it. You guys got to do it. It's your turn. We happened to avoid this when I was, living with some other dudes. We just did our own dishes, and we pretty much avoided that problem because nobody had that many dishes, or nobody left it that long. But I would never do that. I would never touch the dishes. I'd be like, okay, I will clean the whole rest of the house for you. I would maybe do that, but you got to clean the dishes, man. It's not going to be me.
Because you hate dishes that much.
Yeah, but even for people who maybe enjoy it a little bit, that is so gross. 6 months is such a long time to let stuff fester, and man, it must have taken you like you said 3 hours or something, and I would never do that. I would avoid the not talking.
It was an amazing biology experiment. What's funny is that the icing on the cake was I pointed the George Foreman grill, and he just took his George Foreman grill and he threw it in the trash because he didn't want to clean it. And I was like, well, what about the rice in the rice cooker that's been there for 6 months?
Was it your rice cooker?
No, it was I think it was Sam's rice cooker that Mike had used and then not cleaned up. But the rice had turned green, and what's funny is that you couldn't actually see the rice because whatever was growing had built this sort of a silkworm sort of nest on top or something. So it was like you couldn't actually see the rice. You could just it was like looking through some sort of misty fog of of bacteria or fuzz or whatever.
Oh. Okay, so what you said? What about the rice cooker? What happened to the rice cooker?
So Mike was like, she won't look in the rice cooker. It'll be fine.
Gross. He just put the lid on it or whatever.
Yeah, well, the lid, it was one of those fold down sort of rice cookers where the lid just kind of folds down on top of it. And I was just like, man, if she looks in the rice cooker, you are so busted.
Oh, no, I would never do that. I wouldn't have that strain in the relationship after that where you're like, all right, I'm not going to really talk to you anymore because you're an idiot. But that wouldn't happen because I would never do these dishes. I would just be like, oh, well, you're fucked then.
I think I remember now why I felt compelled to basically make a good impression. It's because I think earlier that year, Mike had really helped me out earlier that year, where for summer I didn't want to go back home and live with my folks, and I basically needed a place to stay. I was in that sort of zone where I had to be independent mentally, but I couldn't be independent monetarily. And so Mike had basically got me a job at the place where he worked. He basically gave me a good recommendation, and his parents let me stay there for the summer, and I got some of my food but not all of my food, and I basically lived rent free for the summer and stuff like that. And I really liked his parents. They were really good people. And so I think his mom was coming over. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make it good for
Okay,
for
well, that's
Mike's
nice.
mom.
That's nice. Still, I would have been like, man, I'll clean up all the whole rest of the house. You got to do the dishes like that. That is just like, oh man.
It was like one of those sort of evolving sort of arguments, you know, that you get in where like, okay, well, I'm just going to do our dishes, but like there's no place to do your dishes because whatever dishes were left were like, you know, all of Mike's dishes were in the sink, you know, in the kitchen sink, just
Right,
sitting
right.
there, and like so yeah, there wasn't really a good thing, but like what was interesting is that we ended up getting into the conversation, a side conversation with Sam that to this day I still think about when I do dishes, which is the do you wash the backside of the plate?
Okay, you know what's really stupid? That you've told me this before, and we'll tell, you know, the listeners, but now I think about it every time I do the dishes. because you basically told me this, and it's actually more. In some ways, it's more striking than the Mike story with the dishes. This is almost more striking to me because like I think about it every time. Go ahead. So like, what are you talking about right now?
So in this process of like, you know, in the early days when we were first in contention, Sam would do his dishes, but he wouldn't wash the back of the plate. He'd only do the portion where you would like, you know, put your food on. And we were like, Sam, you know, it's great that you wash one side of the plate, like the side that you would normally use, but you have to wash the back side of the plate too. And he'd be like, you don't use that. And I'm like, well, it becomes used. You know, you sit it on the table. When you stack plates, it comes in good contact. And he's like, no, it's fine. Like, you only need to do the front side of the plate when you're actually going to wash it. And I'm like, no, that doesn't work, Sam. Like, as soon as you stack the plates up, you're going to have clean surface meet dirty side of the plate, and it's going to be a problem, right? But he utterly refused to basically wash the backside of the plate, right? And so when we were living together, like any dish that Sam had like washed, it was basically functionally not washed because I would like worry that, you know, if he's going to stack cups within cups, like the cups, like, you know, could I trust the inside of the cup if it was a stacked cup? I can't trust the plate, obviously, because the plates are going to be like, the table may not have been clean when he put it down. And if we like had spaghetti and we stacked spaghetti plates, and obviously spaghetti is going to be on the bottom of the plate drying and everything like that. So like any plate that he did, like I just couldn't trust. And then of course, how it affects me now is that if I have like cleaned the table, right? If I've cleaned the table and I clean my tables with bleach, and you know, I'll do soap and then bleach, and then I'll like come back and wash them off. If we've eaten off a plate and someone goes to take it to the dishwasher, I'll be like, "Don't stack the plate," because now I only want to wash the front of the plate. I don't want to wash the back of the plate, and I know that the table I set it on is clean. But of course, then it has like this sort of like problem in the back of the head where I'm like, well, what if they got food on their hands?
Okay, see,
And
this
it was
is my like
put
okay.
on the back of the plate. So now I'm like always like trying my best and my hardest to like make sure the front of the plate is washed and get out of washing the back of the plate, but then like being so paranoid about it that I end up washing the back of the plate anyway.
Okay, so here's that's funny. That's not the way I think about it, right? Okay, like if you pick up the plate with your hands, even if your hands are clean, they have oils on them. It's gonna get dirty. And so, like, great, clean the table. That's one thing. Right, clean the plates. That's another. They're actually it doesn't. They're not even related. You can stack up your plates. That's fine. Every time you have to wash the whole plate, both sides. There's no getting around it. That's silly. You can't do it. That's disgusting. And you know what?
What's funny is that like this really affected like my living situation also too, is because like I lived with a whole bunch of nerds. Like Sam was like a super intellectual, so the whole reason that his premise was basically you only want to watch the front of the plate was that he was in super efficiency mode, right? How to like get the most out of doing least.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Right. And then, like, you know, Mike was like electrical engineer and things like that. Not clean people by any standard.
I was gonna say.
And it's also it was kind of weird. Like, you realize when you start living with a person that, like, some people are cleaner and some people are dirtier. And I was like, I was cleaner so far than any roommate I'd ever lived with. And I found this to be a surprising fact.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, it sounds like you lived with some pretty disgusting dudes.
Yes, I did, actually. Yes, I did. What's funny is that like you hear about other stories and you realize that I didn't have it that bad. Like there are some people out there
Who are way
who are
worse.
way worse. Yeah.
Yeah, I think about it every time I wash plates. It's because like the story of like not washing the back of the plates horrifies me, and I'm like, wash back the plate, gotta wash back the plate. Like that's just what you gotta do.
Well, it was just like you would see him make this argument, and then like right after a dinner in which he like stacks 6 plates because like we had basically eaten together that day or something like that, and you're just like, it's obvious that you're stacking dirty plates on top of one another and that they're gonna have dirty backs.
Maggie has heard this story, and so like I always joke with her whenever we're doing dishes and the plates are stacked. I'm like, I don't need to wash the bottom of this, right? And she, rolls her eyes because that's not true.
Yeah, so for me, it still affects me today, especially if I use usually the plate for pizza, because what'll happen is that I'll cook my pizza on foil, and then I'll put the foil on top of the plate and wrap the plate basically with the excess foil. So at no point really does my hand actually touch the plate. It's all wrapped in foil.
Right.
So then I'm like, when I get done, I unwrap the foil and I throw the foil away, and now I have a clean plate again. And I'm just like, I'll just set it right back in.
Well, that does sound a bit lazy to me. A little bit wasteful.
It is, yeah,
Yeah,
it
you're
is. But, it's also like one of those sort of situations where like, now like when I do dishes, because like I've had this sort of experience, like now I like hold my dishes up to the light and make sure that like there's no dry bits that are attached and that the plate looks totally polished and glossy, and then I'll like look at the edges in the back because that's where the most collection of icky stuff gets.
Gosh, I hope nobody listening to this is eating.
This has been a Gravity Well podcast. Thank you for listening and have a lovely day. We'll see you next time.